It's my favorite segment of the week. It is the Steelers Talk mailbag here in Week 13. The Pittsburgh Steelers are about to take on the Buffalo Bills at home here in Week 13 in a big playoff caliber matchup. But before we get into your questions today, I just want to thank you guys for all the people that have subscribed to the channel, that support our show. But also, if you want to join this community of over 105,000 Steelers fans that have already clicked that subscribe button, click that subscribe button now for our daily content. We put out 2 videos every single day on this channel. We also go live for every single Steelers game, and we try and keep this channel as interactive as possible. We have daily community posts and polls. Of course, you guys get crazy with your takes down there in the comments section. We also go live twice a week during the week to talk about the Steelers and all the latest news and rumors. And, of course, we go live for every single Steelers game as well, where we react to the game together. So if you guys want to join a community of people that bleed black and gold, that want daily content, and that suits your needs here on YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's get into the questions here, starting with my man, Mike Nintendo Master, who says, is it time to consider a coaching change in Pittsburgh? Now, Mike, my philosophy on approaching a potential coaching change here in Pittsburgh is you're going to give it to the end of the year. And if this team doesn't make the playoffs, if they are below 500, et cetera, and it's just a very disappointing end to the year, if Tomlin loses the locker room, for example, and it's just very clearly time to move on, then yeah, you explore trade options. You explore maybe Tomlin stepping away from football or retiring for a year, and bringing in somebody new because, plain simply, guys, it's been almost a decade now since Mike Tomlin's won a playoff game. He's been to the playoffs plenty of times. He just always loses in the first round, and this team is always competitive, and it's always, somewhat good, but it's pretty mediocre, and it's pretty clear by the time we make it to the playoffs that, we're not on the same level as the legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And, once you get to almost a decade of that being the case, you have to start pointing at the guy at the top at some point. So we'll see what ends up happening. It's still very possible. In fact, I'm predicting that the Steelers will win double-digit wins this year, and they'll get into the playoffs and maybe even win the division, and they'll have a chance to get a playoff win. And if they do that, obviously you're bringing back Mike Tomlin. So it's at 6-5, still a lot of football left to be played. It's no time to be making sweeping declarations at this point in terms of what the Steelers need to do at head coach next year. I'm going to let the season play out, and then I'll come up with my take. Then we get to Yami with a 5, says, do you think coaching changes happens regardless of this season? Previous Steelers are criticizing the schematics. Essex and Harrison are examples. I will say this. What if they win the Super Bowl? Let's just run that scenario, all right? Are they going to change the coaches? No. So, when you say regardless of this season, I have to answer no, because if they go to the playoffs, if they have 10 wins, I really have a hard time believing that they're going to fire Mike Tomlin. But something that they might do is they might replace Terrell Austin. That's a possibility. I believe Austin's contract is up at the end of this season, so it's very possible they could just go out and find a new defensive coordinator, which I think would be helpful. But certainly I don't think that they're going to get rid of Tomlin no matter what happens this season or anything like that. Harrison, I'm actually not sure if James watches the film. I think he watches the games, and he's very reactionary like we are. I don't think Harrison's actually sitting down and watching the film. I know Trey, sits down and watches the film, and I agree with a lot of things that he's been saying, especially this past week. The defensive schematics were bad for Pittsburgh this past week, going back to a single high system. But that's not the defense that they've been playing, for the most part over the last month. They've been playing a lot of two high safety stuff over the last month, and then they went back to playing a lot of single high stuff that was not working at all at the beginning of the season, and it was a very similar result to the beginning of the season. So hopefully Austin and Tomlin kind of wise up and go back to, the quarters and the two high safety system that we saw them deploy in recent weeks, because this defense played very well when they played that. So we'll just have to see how the season unfolds here, Yami, but we're just going to have to see what they do. $5 from Interstellar Reaper says, do you think Notre Dame's head coach Marcus Freeman could replace Tomlin as head coach, or will the Steelers hire someone inside the organization? I don't think they would hire someone from within the organization unless it's maybe Arthur Smith. If players are really adamant that they want Art as the next head coach, then maybe they consider him. If the offense plays really well down the stretch, maybe they consider him. But to answer your question about Freeman, I don't love the idea of bringing in college coaches that don't have any connections to the NFL game. And Freeman, is a team builder. He's a good leader of men. All that's great. But I think something that goes underrated in these head coaching hires, guys, is what kind of staff can you build? What do your offensive and defensive coordinators look like? And for a guy like Marcus Freeman, who's not going to be calling plays as a head coach in the NFL, he's going to have really good coordinators. And I just don't know if he has those connections. And that goes for like Dan Lanning from Oregon, for example, and the other guys that would be coming over from the college game. So personally, the answer is no. I think I'd rather go and get somebody from the NFL ranks or somebody that's at least very familiar with the NFL ranks and strategy, and because it's a completely different game, guys. The hash marks being wider in college completely changed strategy, completely changed spacing. It's a completely different game, college to pro. So I don't know if I want somebody with not a lot of NFL experience coming in and coaching this team. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Should the Steelers move on from Mike Tomlin? Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. Just a second here. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here. When that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me a yes or a no down there in the comments. $10 from Steelers Dad says, just wanted to say how much I appreciate your coverage. There is literally no other source of Steelers content like Chat Sports. I appreciate that, Steelers Dad. We try to give you guys the best Steelers coverage that we can. We have late nights, we have early mornings to get you guys this coverage, 2 videos a day, plus our live coverage. And, of course, we have to watch film as well as do all the graphics. And it's just a lot of work, but you guys make it worth it, 100%, man. I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to talk Steelers football with you guys every single day, so I appreciate that message there, Steelers Dad. JV Free says Steelers defense got the ball back twice to tie or win. The loss is on Rudolph. I have to agree with this. Like, the defense didn't play perfectly by any stretch of the imagination, but when you have the ball twice within, the final 5 minutes of the game or whatever it was, and by the way, you had a wide open Roman Wilson down the field for a game-winning touchdown and you miss him, the game is kind of on the quarterback, guys. I'm sorry. That would be the number one reason. Now, the defense certainly played their part. If the defense just plays better, Rudy's not even in that position, right? And, if Kyle Duggar catches that interception that he dropped at the end of the first half, it's a tie ball game. And you don't lose the game. You go to overtime instead. So, I do put Rudolph at the highest point of the pyramid for the loss last week. But it's not an easy situation. As a backup quarterback that hasn't had a lot of reps with the guys on the field, it's not an easy situation to step into, but I do feel like if you have better quarterback play, you win that football game. Cheeseball comes in here with one, says, did you see the report that an NFL insider reported a long-time NFL head coach is interested in a change of scenery? This is actually, yes, I did see this. This is actually Josina Anderson, who's got connections to Mike Tomlin, by the way. She kind of had some inline road to kind of what the Steelers were going to do this offseason. I think the wording she used this offseason was some very interesting changes coming in Pittsburgh this offseason, and boy, was that the case, man. Trading for DK Metcalf, getting rid of George Pickens, bringing in Aaron Rodgers, trading for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. There's definitely some interesting changes, so she was right on that. And she does have connections to Tomlin, and this was the exact tweet. We found it here. It says, meanwhile, there's a longtime NFL head coach out there who is considering wanting a change of scenery and has told others of these thoughts. If he acts on those lingering feelings, his departure would clearly add to the list of vacancies. So a lot of people think that this is either John Harbaugh of the Ravens or Mike Tomlin of the Steelers. But honestly, with Josina's connections to Tomlin and the Steelers, I kind of think it is Mike Tomlin, but I guess we'll just have to see how the season plays out, and if it doesn't end well, I'm certainly open to trading Mike Tomlin at the end of this season. We'll just have to see what that looks like. All right, before we get into the rest of your questions this week, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Prize Picks, and it is officially the holiday season, my friends, and in my opinion, there is no better time of the calendar year to be a sports fan. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening all at once, and while all that action is going on, there's just one place where it feels so good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super simple to play. Just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about Prize Picks is how you play is up to you. If you want a little bit more flexibility, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you're really feeling strong about your lineup, and you want bigger payouts for it, go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is, if you know ball. This weekend, Ponzi and I are taking the more on touchdowns for DK Metcalf and the more on passing yards for Josh Allen when the Steelers take on the Bills this weekend. But if you guys want to get on the action here before Thanksgiving, before this weekend's professional football and collegiate football action, you guys can download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the PrizePicks app today. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Next question here from TJ KJ with me on the profile pic there. It says, what if we get Jon Gruden since he saw something in Will Howard? Also, if we don't, what would be the best head coach to QB we could trade for? This is a good question, DJ KJ. Now, Jon, I think he's kind of a coach that's kind of, the game has kind of passed him by a little bit. Even when he was with the Raiders a couple years ago, he was, behind the eight ball when it comes to offensive schematics in comparison to guys like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. And he's definitely not the most innovative offensive mind in the world. I think he's a good, I think he's one of the most charismatic people ever. I mean, he would absolutely fill Mike Tomlin's shoes in the locker room and in the meeting room, but players would play hard for him. But I would wonder about the staff that he would assemble in Pittsburgh. And if you want to go forward with Will Howard as your starting quarterback, maybe Jon Gruden, a guy that really believes in him, would be the right guy for that job. But honestly, I don't know if Will Howard's the right guy for the job, all right? Like, he had some accuracy issues. In fact, a lot of accuracy issues at Ohio State. His final year there. Now, I know what you're saying. He led the country in completion percentage, but a lot of that was screens and a lot of that was RPOs, and he was playing with incredible talent. When he was actually asked to make big boy throws down the field, there was very consistent accuracy issues from Howard on his film, and he played really well down the stretch in the college football playoff, and that deserves some credit, and I'm on record saying I think Will Howard has NFL starter upside. He also brings great size and some nice mobility to the table, some nice power as a rusher as well. So he's not completely worthless, and he's not terrible necessarily, but he's a sixth-round pick. There's a reason why, every single team in the league passed on him for, as long as they did. I'm rooting for Will. I really am. But if the Steelers have an opportunity to get a really talented guy early in the draft next year, I'd probably pull the trigger on that. But that's just me. So make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are a real one, the real ones know clicking that thumbs up icon and liking today's show is the fastest and easiest way to help out our channel. It tells the YouTube algorithm that you enjoy our content and that they should recommend it to other Steelers fans like yourself. So we greatly appreciate everybody that likes the videos. Then we get to JT Clover. It says, can the Steelers make the playoffs without winning the division? Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's say the Ravens completely go ramshot the rest of the way. Maybe maybe they go 6-0. Let's say, but let's say the Steelers win their other 4 games and they are still sitting at 10-7, and they beat the Bills in the process. Right? That would be a part of that scenario. You would have the tiebreaker over the Bills in that potential scenario. And, they have tiebreakers theoretically against a number of teams. Now, I think that the Colts and Patriots are probably going to be division winners, so tiebreakers won't really matter there. But certainly 10 wins could get you into the playoffs if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's certainly a scenario where you could be a wild card, but I would say the most likely way the Steelers make the playoffs, JT, is if they win the division. But first you got to get to 10 wins, man. That's got to be – it's got to be the priority. Got to win 4 of your last 6 if you want to put yourself in legitimate contention come playoff time. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Can the Steelers make the playoffs without winning the AFC North? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. I think it's possible, but I do think that the best path to the playoffs is to win the division at this point. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are down there in the comments. And that'll be it for this week's Steelers Talk Mailbag. Great questions once again this week, guys. We'll be back next week with another Steelers Talk Mailbag. And again, on Sunday here, we'll be live for Steelers versus Bills starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. About an hour of pregame coverage. Then we got live play-by-play and analysis of the game itself. Then we got postgame coverage as well. So make sure you click that subscribe button. Join the over 100,000 Yinzers already a part of our family. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.